Okay, aviators, in this one we're going to be talking about radio communications. The formula is very, very simple. Who are you going to be talking to, and then say who you are, where you are, and what you want. It's that simple. Well, okay, easier said than done, right? But, alright, let's say we're on the ground, right? And we wanted to contact tower, or I'm sorry, ground. We're on the ground first, right? So we have a tower. In your basic airport, you'll have a tower, and let's say we're in a Delta airspace. Let's just keep it simple. So we have our tower. We have one person that's sitting here. He is the tower frequency, and then we have another person over here, and this person is ground. So every time you look in the tower, you're actually not seeing just the tower person. The tower and ground person is there. Why would you want the ground person to be up in the tower too? Well, the ground controller controls everything that's on the ground in the airport. So the tower can see, hey, Cessna 1234, you can taxi to runway 3 via taxiway Delta. And I know that it's clear because I can see that there's no aircraft on Delta. There's aircraft on Charlie and Foxtrot, so I'm not going to guide you that way. I'm going to have you go this way instead. That's why the ground person needs to be up in the tower so he can be able to see, he or she should be able to see all of that. So think of it as the ground controller controls everything on the ground. When you're coming into land, as soon as you're landing, you're talking to the tower because the tower controls everything that's in the sky within the airport vicinity. So once you're on the ground, the tower person may say, okay, please exit the runway when able and contact ground. When you're exiting the runway, you contact ground. The ground controller is going to say, okay, I see you're here. You want to go over there. I'll taxi you to there via this way, that way, and then cross this runway and then go that way. That is what the ground controller does. So let's start out with the ground. Remember, for communication, we're going to say ground. Now, the who you are, where you are, and what you want applies here. So I'll put it over here so we can remember who you are, where you are, and what you want. Right? Alright, so ground. Who am I? This is November 777 Hotel Echo. You can say Skyhawk 777 Hotel Echo. You can say, commuter. You can say just Cessna 1234, whatever you want. But make sure you identify yourself by saying who you are. Now, every tail number in America will start with a N or November. So you may omit this by just saying ground 777 Hotel Echo or ground 777 Hotel Echo. Yeah, don't say triple. That's a bad habit that I have. So ground 777 Hotel Echo or whatever your call sign is on your tail, where you are. So 777 Hotel Echo, currently at the ramp. At the ramp or parking area or your FBO or wherever you're going to be at, that is where you are. So now the tower knows who you are and they know where to look in order to vector you to or give you directions on how to get to the runway and what you want. So I want to taxi to the active runway. We know the active runway by listening to what's called the ATIS. We'll get into weather in another video, but for now, the ATIS information literally tells you, and it updates every hour unless there's a significant weather change. Every hour there's going to be a weather, like for example, let's say the winds are coming from 090 at 3 knots. Sky's clear. The altimeter setting is 29902 and runway 9er is in use. Remember earlier about the runway, about the traffic patterns. Remember if the winds, here's our runway. Remember here's our compass rose. So this is 360, this is 090, 180, 270 from the previous video. Remember, if the winds are coming from 090, if they're coming from 090, we want our aircraft to be flying in this direction, right? So we're going to be flying toward 090. So the runway in use is probably going to be runway 9er. And that information you're going to find in the ATIS. So with that information, you can also tell the ground controller that you have the ATIS information. Every hour, that information will update. So let's say that information that I just said was alpha. That's how they categorize these. And then for the next hour, let's say the winds have changed a little bit. Well, information Bravo, what did I say? This was 090 at 3 knots, 2 and runway 9's in use. There is more information, but to keep it simple, let's say that was on the first hour of the day, that this was the weather, what it was doing at the airport. Now the next following hour, we have to update it. So now let's say the winds have shifted a little bit, and the winds are now coming from 120 at 5. The winds picked up a little bit. We have a high pressure system coming in, so it's getting a little bit colder. So 3092, but we're still using runway 9. And again, the next hour is going to be Charlie, and then Delta, and then it just keeps on going and going and going and going. For every airport that has an ATIS will have this information. So when you're flying to another airport before you land, it might be smart to get the ATIS before you land. That way you know what the winds are doing, what the altimeter setting is that, and what runway that you can expect to land at. Again, we'll get a little bit more into this when we talk about weather. But for now, let's stick with now we got the weather that we listened to. So we're on the ground, 7 Hotel Echo, we're at the ramp, and we want to taxi to the active runway, which is 9, because we listened to the ATIS. So we like to taxi to the active, and you can say with information, whatever ATIS information you have. Let's say, for instance, we have alpha. Okay, so I'd like to taxi to the active. We know that the active runway is 9er, and we're telling the ground that we have the information, the current information, which is alpha. And then if you want to have go above and beyond, which you can actually tell them on top of that before they even ask the question, is which direction are you going to depart to? Or are you going to stay within the pattern? Are you going to do landing practice there, or are you actually going to depart to the north, south, east, or west? So that's what you can do here. Departing VFR to the west. I mean, you don't really have to put this in there. I mean, obviously they're going to know that you're VFR, because to fly IFR, you got to be on an IFR flight plan, and that's a whole nother story. So we can just go ahead and get rid of this just to make it simple. So again, who we are, where we are, and what we want. So we go into ground, 777 Hotel Echo. We're currently at the ramp. We'd like to taxi to the active with the information alpha, and we're departing to the west. So that's exactly all the information right there. Now, the key thing about this too is to expect what the tower, what the tower and ground is going to say back ahead of time before they even say it. Hint, hint, they say the same thing every single time, and they all do it in this order. You're gonna be saying the same thing every single time. You're gonna be calling whoever you're gonna be contacting, who you are, where you are, and then what you want. Every single time. Now, what I'd recommend when you're first starting out talking to the tower and talking to the ground and talking to other controllers, write down verbatim exactly what you're going to say before you say it, and then read it verbatim, so you're not trying to memorize it. Don't try to memorize anything. Just let this part come naturally. It will come. It took me about, I want to say a good 30 to 40 hours before I can actually contact any controller comfortably, because I've never actually did this. Now the fact that I'm actually teaching it in this method to actually write it down and read it verbatim, the radio communication ability will come to you so much quicker if you do it that way. So, ground, 7 Hotel Echo, ramp, taxi to the active, information alpha. we're going to be departing to the west. Ground's going to be coming on and saying 7 Hotel Echo, whatever airport you're at, ground, good morning. Go ahead and taxi to the active runway. So taxi to runway 9er via Bravo Foxtrot, or wherever you're going to be going. And this is another a good time to have an airport diagram handy. So let's say your airport diagram looks like this and looks like that, and you are right here, and here is the active runway. There is a taxiway that goes from here. There's another taxiway that goes here. Let's say that this taxiway is let's say B. So B is Bravo. This taxiway is, let's say it's Charlie. So if you're right here, how are you going to get through here? Well, the ground is going to say, good morning, 7 Hotel Echo, taxi to runway 9er, again this is still our 9er, taxi to runway 9er via Charlie, Bravo. Now if there's a runway that we're crossing, what they may say is, taxi to runway 9er via Charlie, Bravo, cross runway, whatever runway that this would be. So you can expect that. Now every single time that they give you an instruction, you have to respond back to acknowledge that you got the correct information that they just told you. So how you can do that is all you have to say again is, okay, so I'm taxiing to runway 9 via Charlie, Bravo, cross blah 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 for 777 Hotel Echo. Imagine if you did not end it with your call sign. You would pretty much just say, okay, thanks ground, I'm going to taxi to runway 9er via Charlie, Bravo, cross the runway. The ground is going to be like, okay, who was that? I don't know who that was, right? So make sure you end it by always acknowledging your call sign at the very end when you're copying back an instruction. All right, so now we've taxied. We are holding short of the runway and we're getting ready to take off. So remember, who do we contact if we need to go up into the air? Ground or the tower? So now we got to contact your tower. So now instead of ground, we're going to say tower. Who we are. Tower 777 Hotel Echo. We're currently holding short of runway 9er. And then what we want. We are ready for departure. Ready for departure. So who we are, where we are, what we want. We're ready to go. Now again, the key thing is what to expect they're going to say to you. So 777 Hotel Echo, tower, you are cleared for takeoff, runway 9er, straight out departure approved, or left turn on course approved, or whatnot. Just expect what they're going to say. And also, anytime that you're given an instruction, make sure you always respond back to them. So if you were cleared to take off runway 9er, then you can say, all right, clear for takeoff, runway 9er, 777 Hotel Echo. That's literally all you have to say. Now, let's say we're already in the air. Does this really still apply? Well, we'll find out. Now, let's say we're contacting an approach controller. So here's an airport. Let's zoom out a little bit right here. Here's a little airport. And of that airport, tower controls this much airport. So about 4 nautical miles in each direction, right? Let's see, here we go. So 4 nautical miles in each direction. Now, outside of this, the tower can no longer keep track of all of these aircraft outside of here. Instead, a approach or departure controller will have all of this. And in fact, there may be, depending on the size of the airport, they can have multiple controllers. So you may have this controller at a certain frequency, let's say 125.8, that's actually Daytona approach frequency, 125.8. And if you're outside of their range, or let's say you're going into another controller's range, let's say over here is Jacksonville, theirs is 1817. So when you go outside of here, they may transfer you to, hey, contact Jacksonville approach on 118.17. And I know this is probably Greek right now, but we'll get into all of this when we start getting into our cross-country flight planning. So don't worry if this is a bit confusing right now. All this will definitely be explained. However, let's say once we're outside of the tower's frequency, now we're in the approach controllers. So if you, and this is completely optional too, once you're outside of their airspace, there's no requirement that you have to contact an approach controller. Now, if you want other services like flight following and some other services, weather services, then these guys may be able to give you those kind of services like traffic advisories and whatnot. But let's just say that we're in the air and we're contacting these guys, and does this still apply? Let's say I do want flight following. So I'll contact who I'm contacting. So of course I'll say approach. Oh, if I can spell right. So approach, who I am, 777 Hotel Echo, where I am, approach 777 Hotel Echo, currently 5 miles. Let's say, what I say, I'll say I was departing to the west. So I'm 5 miles to the west of your airport, whatever airport you are. And then what you want. I would like to request flight following. So it does actually apply. Who you are, 7 Hotel Echo, where you are, 5 miles to the east of whatever airport you are, and then what you want, requesting flight following. Cool. All right, so we got our aircraft started up, we contacted ground, we taxied to the runway, we switched the tower, we got up into the air, now we're contacting approach, we're flying through the air. Now how do we get back into our airport or fly to another airport? Does this still apply? Let's find out. So we're going to, let's say we're going to go to, I don't know, let's say we're going to Gainesville. So we're going to Gainesville today. So Gainesville identifier is K, G, and V. Every airport will have its own unique identifier. So let's say we're going, since the tower controls everything in the air, right? So now who we are, so we have to say, hey tower, who we are, 777 Hotel Echo, where you are, we're currently 5 miles, or well, you don't want to constant that close. We're currently 10 miles out to the east, so 10 miles to the east, where we are, and in some cases you can actually be more specific. I'm 10 miles to the east at 2,000 feet or 2,500 feet. So at, let's just say 3,000. 7 Hotel Echo, 10 miles to the east at 3,000. And then what you want? You want to come in and land, right? So request. You can, now there's multiple ways that you can say request landing. You can say request landing. You can request a full stop. You can request traffic pattern. There's many things that they want to know what you want. So in this case, let's request a full stop landing. So let's say request full stop. Oops, full stop with information, whatever ATIS information that they had at the time. So remember, you want to listen to the ATIS before you get to the airport. That way you know what runway is in use, you know what the winds are doing, if the crosswinds are exceeding your aircraft limitations. Remember, ours was 15 knots. If it's exceeding, then you know you're probably not a good idea to land there. That's why it's very important to listen to what the weather is doing before you actually fly to the airplane or fly to the airport. So this actually does apply. So who we are, Gainesville Tower, 7 Hotel Echo. We are 10 miles to the east at 3,000 feet. we'd like to request full stop with information, whatever the current information is that you listen to. Okay, so now the tower, Gainesville Tower, or 702 Echo, Gainesville Tower, proceed inbound for a right downwind for whatever runway that they're going to be using at the time. So now hopefully all this is starting to come together now. Remember the traffic patterns that we discussed in the previous video. So if we're coming from the east, and let's say they're using runway 7, say they're using runway 7, they normally have us land at runway 7 or 25. There's 25 here, and they have a big old large runway here. It's like, big old runway. Anyway, so we're coming in, and he says, okay, since you're coming in from 10 miles from the east, go ahead and report midfield midfield right down for runway 7. Or he may just say, hey, say south of the field and report a right base for runway 7. So what does that even mean? So if we're coming from the east, remain south of the field. Why? Well, if you have big aircraft coming out here, they don't want our traffic to be mingling with each other. So if we say south of the field, away from that departure path, then we're going to be safe out of the way. So we got our right base. Remember, we have our upwind, we have our crosswind, we have our downwind, and we have our right base. Why are they all right again? Because all the turns are going to be to the right, right? Also, when you're on your downwind, which side is the runway on? It's on your right side. That's the easy way to remember which is right base, left base. In this case, he told us to enter in right base for runway 7. So we're going to maneuver our aircraft to end up on this leg right here. This right here is the right base, right? Now, typically you don't want to be that close to the runway, but maybe right base is going to be kind of over here. But, and of course, then you would say, you would reply back, okay, cool, I'm going to remain south of the airport. I'm going to be entering a right base for runway 7 for 777 Hotel Echo. And then if he has any kind of other things that he may want to say to you, he may say it. Just talk to them just like a normal person, because they are just like normal people, just like you and me. They're just like normal people. The only thing different is they're on a radio. That's literally it. To some, that may seem intimidating, but it's really not. It's like I said, once you get in the flow of things, it's going to be much better. So we're going to be on the right base for runway 7. Right around here, they may say, hey, you are clear to land for runway 7. So once you're here, and then you can always repeat it, okay? Remember, confirm, verify what they just said to you so they can know that you got the correct information that they just gave you. So if they tell you 777 Hotel Echo, Gainesville Tower, you're clear to land runway 7. Then you would say, clear to land runway 7, 777 Hotel Echo. Remember, always end it with your call sign. As soon as you land and you exit the runway, the tower may say, okay, where would you like to park? Well, I'd like to go to the FBO. I'd like to go to the ramp, 777 Hotel Echo. Now what he's going to do is, since you're not in the air anymore, he's going to ask, or he or she may ask you to switch over to ground controller. So now we're going back to where we started, right? And it's the same thing applies. Where you are, you're off the runway at whatever taxiway that you exited the runway from, and you got off at taxiway Charlie, for example. So ground, 777 Hotel Echo. I'm off of runway 7 at Charlie, requesting to go to the ramp or the FBO or the restaurant. Who knows? Maybe the airport has a really good restaurant. I'm really hungry. And then they would reply by saying, all right, 777 Hotel Echo, I'm on the ground. You can taxi to this via this taxiway, that taxiway, that taxiway. And again, always confirm by saying, repeating back what they said to you, and then ending it with your call sign. So for my tips and tricks for radio communication, I know it may take some time. Like I said, it took me a very long time, but in order to kind of cheat and kind of shortcut your way through it, write down exactly what you're going to say verbatim to the tower, to the ground, to the controllers. That's going to help you so much, and read it verbatim every single time until you no longer have to read it every single time. Eventually it's going to be committed to memory. Just let that come naturally, okay? Another thing that can help too is, I'm going to write up a website up here, because the more you hear it, the better and more comfortable, at least it was for me. Look up this website, or actually it's Live ATC. Live ATC. This is actually a website, it's an app. You can actually go to your airport, find out your tower frequency, find out your ground frequency, find out your approach frequency. You can plug it into here and you can actually listen to it on your phone or on your computer, or if you wanted to, if you have the capability to, get a handheld radio and tune to whatever frequency that your airport is at and sit out on the ramp and just listen. And you'll notice you'll hear the same thing over and over and over and over again. So that's what I'd recommend. You go to ATC Live and just listen. Listen. When you're actually out on the plane, it's very distracting. Especially when you're first starting to learn, you gotta worry about the engine instruments. You got your flight instructors looking at you kind of weird. He's giving his instruction, and now the tower is at you, and it's like, oh my God, it is a lot. So in order to alleviate that kind of stress, go ahead and write down verbatim what you're needing to say to the ground controller, to the tower controller, and then that is going to be so much better to you in the long run. And that is my suggestions for radio communications.